Oh, hey, we're live.
Yeah.
That was quick. Hello. We're live and direct from, well, London, Ontario, and Devon, where are you now?
Fort Collins, Colorado.
Fort Collins, Colorado, and so we're probably both under a little bit of snow. Do you got snow there? You got snow there, right?
No, we didn't. Well, we did, and then it's gone, as per
Oh,
Colorado norms.
yeah, I guess, right? Unless you're up in the elevation of other areas of Colorado.
Yep.
Um, hey, do you actually get to see, do you ever get out to play games with Mike Fitzgerald?
Um, no, I do know he's in the general area, but he's a
Yeah,
little
he's
bit
in,
far away for just
yeah,
normal
I don't know what
payment.
I don't know
Yeah.
the geography very well, so like you may very well be, millions of miles apart, and I wouldn't know the difference. You're in the same state though, so
Yes.
I mean, it can't be too far. But I mean, some states are ridiculously like long.
This is true. Yep.
I mean, like
Colorado isn't quite one of those,
yeah.
but
But then you got all
yeah.
the mountains to navigate too, so
Mhm.
I guess it just makes that difference. See, in Canada, I mean, everything's really far away, so I always think that the states are really close to each other, but I don't know. I just fly over you guys. I never drive through it. Anyway, so let's chat. Let's talk about what's going on. Tricks are for kids was the name of this this episode because you've totally taken the trick taking out of your game. We talked about that last week and how that cleaned things up, or last time you were on the show, how that cleaned things up. But how has it played out? How have people enjoyed it more or less, or what's the thought so far?
Well, I've had um, three more play tests, one
Hmm.
with four, one with three, and one with two players since
Oh, that's
then.
great.
So all accounts. Um, and it's gone really well. People have liked the direction I took it in. They say it plays a lot better. People in the 3 and 4 groups had played both versions.
Okay.
Um,
And so they really liked what? Why is it better?
it plays more smoothly. There's fewer things to pay attention to at any given point in time, but there's still a lot of decisions to make. The one interesting thing that I didn't see coming was that by streamlining it in this specific way, it ended up removing some interesting things that happen when people go back and travel in time. The way I had
Okay.
shifted how the cards on the boards worked meant that
Okay.
when you rippled things forward from the past, changing one card wouldn't have as big of an effect as it used to in the old
Oh, okay.
system
And
for
is that because of
various reasons.
that's because of the permanency of the cards on the board and how you sort of mechanically affected
Um,
quote
Partially the
unquote time?
permanency, partially the homogenization of the cards, because before each card would have different types of actions on it,
Right.
and now all of them have a single gather and a single produce action for the same resource.
Oh, right.
So
Because
if you
before
change
they
it,
used to be like there used to be like what, four different things? I can't
yeah,
remember.
three I think, three on each
Yeah.
card.
Okay, and so now it's really just one thing?
Two,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I only took out one, but doing so homogenized it a little bit too much,
Okay. Oh,
such that the paradox that people would get for going back in time and changing things wasn't really worth it.
so so the risk isn't worth the reward, or
Yeah,
it's too easy? The risk
uh,
isn't
the
worth the reward.
the risk isn't worth the reward, and the reward just wasn't all that interesting anymore to begin with.
Okay, so how are you gonna? Did you fix that, or is that something you're looking at fixing?
After the last playtest, I had an idea just to, go back to hybridize all of the cards, so that
Okay.
instead of there are 4 cards on the board, on each board, each one would have a single color of resource and a gather and a produce action for that resource on it. So instead of a single color, each one is now split in various
Right.
combinations while keeping the same general distribution of produce and gather actions for each color throughout
Okay.
the deck.
So throughout the deck, you're going to have everything balanced, but they're just going to
Hmm.
be on different cards, so
Yeah,
that
so if you
the things are
change
spread
one
out a little.
card, yeah, so if you change one card, more things will get changed on the board.
Okay, so it's kind of that rippling effect that you wanted is going to be more prevalent when you make the cards more each a card more diverse. Does that make
Yeah,
sense? Okay.
yeah.
I think that's what I'm hearing. Okay, and so that you're doing because it was fun, because it was interesting because it made challenges for the players? Why do you think Why do
Um,
you think you need to do that?
well, I mean, time travel is kind of the whole point of it, right?
Yeah.
So if the one comment was that actually going back on the board, if a player doesn't feel it necessary to use that mechanic, then I'm kind of failing it.
Right. Okay. So, okay, here's a question because there's two ends of looking at that
Mm-hmm.
comment, right? Or at least two that I'm seeing immediately. One is that, okay, going back in time is too costly for what I'm getting, or the opposite of that, which is not necessarily exactly the opposite, but it is also a true thing, or could be possibly true, that it's just cheaper and easier for me to do it right now where I am versus going
Mm-hmm.
back. Is that
That
which end of
was
that is it?
that was usually the case. Cheaper and easier right now
Okay. So they need to get something better by
from
going
going
back.
back.
Hmm.
And as it was mostly not changing the status quo anymore. Um, so if adding more drastic changes that happen when somebody ripples something forward will be pretty welcome, I think.
Right, and I
Mhm.
think that you're right that pushes right into the thematics of it, and makes for interesting changes in board games, board state, right? So,
Mhm.
um, if you can lean into that, where oh look, and I do this, and then this happens, now I travel back, and everything's set up exactly as I'd like it. I mean, that's sort of the idea behind a lot of time travel, anyways, is setting a puzzle up in the past so you can finish it in the future, right? So yeah. And what else have you changed? Was really that it? Was that it?
I was looking at scoring last time, I think.
Right. Yes.
Um,
Okay.
and the changes seem to have worked out pretty well. The last game was 3 players, all trying different strategies. So there's science, there's fame with
Right.
influence and getting cards that have big one-time effects. The science is the puzzle you figure out to time things correctly and then get one big point score. And then getting resources, building up your tech, and just working on your time machine. And they ended up at 68 and 69 and 71 points, respectively, having
Okay.
mostly
So nice
the
tight
same.
game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the deal. There's another deal, right? Um, if you want to incentivize behavior, you have to make it worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And so think about that. Like if you're thinking about changing the cards, the change of the cards might do it. I'm just asking you to think in different ways. So the other way of thinking of that is, hey, how can I make it worthwhile for somebody to go back? Is it the card itself? Is it the end result of getting that card? Is it something about scoring that every time you go back, you automatically get 5 points anyways? I mean, that's a really ham-fisted way of doing it. But the idea being here that if you incentivize behavior in the scoring, then people will do it, right? So if that's what you
Mm-hmm.
want them to do, you have to kind of incentivize it. You kind of have to, either beat them with sticks or, hang carrots in front of their faces in order for them to actually do that action. So what are you thinking of doing? Other than just the changing of the cards, does it change? Well, I guess the question is, does the changing of the cards dangle enough carrots for people to do it? Do you think?
I think it dangles half of the carrot that I need, and the other
Okay.
half, um, when the players go back in time and change something, the rule is that if you try to undo something from the past that you can't undo because that resource is no longer available in the present to take away,
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay, I
then
got it.
you'll
Yeah.
get paradox. And so when you get that paradox, in addition to the cards having more combinations so that more things will happen when you change the past, potentially leading to more things being available back there that aren't available on the present board immediately. Um, being able to, if players have an incentive to clear the paradox from their machine, so they get it, it's bad while they have it, but when they clear it off, which happens at a reasonably regular pace,
Hmm.
they get some benefit for it.
Right. So it becomes
So
almost an engine that you're turning your paradox into.
you want to go back in time to get that one-time boost from the paradox at a specific time for another thing you want to try and get done.
Right. So
Is where
it's
going.
like powering up your engine. it could be a point generation engine, could draw more cards, could do lots of stuff. The
Mhm.
idea being that that's a great idea to incentivize going back, is that's the only way you get paradox, right?
Yeah, you're
Is that
still
true?
penalized for a time, and it's still a slight penalty. Even once you remove it, you're limited with your resources to go back for the next cycle of your quantum.
Hmm.
But you get that benefit when you remove it that can possibly make up for that,
Okay.
um,
Yeah.
for losing the
As,
quantum. So,
as long as it doesn't snowball, snowball positively. It also shouldn't be
mhm.
a huge negative, otherwise nobody will ever do it. Uh,
No.
but it's got to be that little bonus plus whatever you did when you were there, whatever that action might
Mhm.
be, is enough to say, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Um, and it shouldn't be a super hard decision, but it also shouldn't be a no brainer either. That's what I always do. So
Mhm.
it's that kind of that riding the line of this is the right time to do it. I think I think that's sort of the feeling that make people feel clever about their actions, is if they timed it right. If they if they said, oh, I go now, and that's good for me or whatever, right? There's that little bit of, I like to feel clever about the idea of going back in time at specific times, and getting the being able to deal with the paradox in a clever way, like shunting it or something. I don't know. That sounds neat, though. Okay, so we've got paradox. What other economies do you have other than the resources themselves? What are we fighting for? Are we fighting for points? Or are we? What is it?
I mean, ultimately for points, it's kind of a euro that
Okay.
way, where there's different things that'll give you different tiers of points based on how well you do in them. Um, like the influence tracks, for each of the 4 guilds, you get influence as you place your guys on the board. And first, second, and third place in each of these tracks will get points at the end. First getting more, then second, then third. And you have to have at least a little bit to even get the third score. Um, and there's
Hmm.
that. There's the breakthroughs for science. So um, when you've upgraded your machine to be able to hold more quantum, which is what you would use the science resource for, then when it cycles,
Hmm.
you fill all your empty spaces. And if you can fill all of them and you don't have any paradox, so you have the max quantum you can have, you can turn that in to get a really big immediate benefit and a big point score right then.
Okay.
Um,
So
and then,
there is that sort of interesting ebb and flow of the quantum that you're trying to manage that as well.
yeah,
Okay.
and you're either
Okay.
using it to mess with the timeline in the past and then get paradox, get the resources to use for other things. But that paradox means you're probably not going to be able to go for the breakthroughs because it
Okay.
clogs up your machine in just
Right.
enough to prevent that. Not enough to prevent you from going back and messing up time some more, but just enough to prevent the
Right.
big points.
So hypothetically, and I know it's not a two-player game, but if there were two players, if there were hypothetically two players, and it could be played with two players.
It works with 2 players.
Oh, does it? Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool. If one person went always for one thing, like always, I'm keeping this clean, I'm just doing quantum and breakthroughs, and the other person was just messing around with their paradox and whatnot, who would win?
I mean, it depends on the players from the games I've had. I think if both
Okay,
are
so
equally matched, completely equally matched, and don't do anything to interfere with the other player's plans,
hmm
then I think science and the breakthroughs are scored just a little bit lower than
oh,
if you did other things.
that's interesting. Okay,
But it's a
and
lot easier to get, even if, yeah, well, hmm, I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
I've
it's a
played
good
it
question.
2
I'm just
players a
wondering.
couple times,
Okay,
and it's worked out differently both times. So,
okay, I'm just wondering because it's an interesting thought experiment when you're designed to think, okay, is one way absolutely guaranteed better than the other? And if so, then you kind of just gotta
you have to work
pare
on
it
it a
down
little
a little
bit.
bit. Yeah, that's all. Okay, so you have all of those things going for you. Um, do you have any idea of what you're up to next in terms of are you cutting stuff? Are you adding stuff? Are you just changing the
Besides
cards? Is
changing
it
the
just
cards a
changing the
little bit,
cards?
um,
Yeah.
like getting it into Tabletop Simulator is the
Right. Okay.
next
Okay.
step.
And have you got Tabletop Simulator yet?
I do have it,
Oh,
and
good.
I've
Okay.
messed around with it. I did a co-design prototype of a legacy CCG-ish, like World of Darkness vampire game way back when. So there's a lot
Okay.
of cards, and so I have. He wrote the Nandeck script that put the cards in there, but I ended up having to modify it later so I can go back to that and hopefully reference that well enough to so it isn't too hard to get the cards in. But yeah,
Right.
I
Okay.
have it.
Okay. So
Experience
are
with it.
you gonna put your cards in through Nandeck and then spit them out and then
That's the
import them
plan.
into table? Oh, okay. All right. How do you do your cards right now?
Um, I do them on Inkscape, so
Okay.
individually. There
All
aren't too
right.
many of them, and then mostly it's copy paste this format and then go through and change the text on
Yeah.
them.
Well, I mean, and do you spit them out as individual cards or as a sheet of nine or what?
Sheets of 9 and then cut them up.
Okay. And but do you have individual images of each card?
Well, they're split off. They can be split off into separate images. So
Yeah.
each card was
Because
made individually and then just kind of clumped together as
yeah,
the 9.
because if you have those, I mean, you don't really need to go
Do
through
Nandeck?
Nandeck again. No, because it's just images, right? They're just all you need to just host them somewhere permanently, like Imager or something, right?
Okay.
Stick them up there as each individual card, and then you can use there's a hidden tool. It's a Java little applet that you just
I heard you
kind of
mention that on the show.
dump. Yeah, and you just dump everything image by image into that, export that as one big JPEG, and then import that into Tabletop Simulator, into the deck, the card deck custom,
Hmm.
and it should come out pretty much perfectly fine. It's
I th-
it's pretty easy.
I think that's probably what I'm going to do for one of the decks,
Yeah,
but then for like because I don't really changing objects on
yeah,
Nandeck is still kind of fiddly for me, and I'm not
yeah.
sure exactly how
Well,
to
I
do
mean,
it. But
Nandeck's a good thing to learn anyways. If it's something
yeah,
you want to learn, go right ahead and do it. And it makes it actually easier in the end, instead of graphically changing everything in Inkscape to use Nandeck to actually,
let's go in Excel,
um,
change the couple
yeah,
cards,
exactly,
export it again.
exactly, and then
Good.
run that script again, and then it'll pump out all your cards, and then you
Hmm.
import all your cards into your deck builder, and then into Tabletop Simulator. What else is component-wise in the game?
There's the cards. There's worker meeples that go on the cards on the
Okay,
boards. There's the little resource gems that go in the center of each board.
right.
Each player has a little player board with a track for quantum, a little 5 space track with a marker on it,
Mhm.
and space on 3 sides of the board for upgrades, and um, the influence track with markers on it for each player.
Okay.
But that's about
And,
it.
and that's separate. The influence track for each player is separate from their player board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I got the inspiration from it from the um, I play Terra Mystica a lot, and the cult
Yeah.
tracks for that.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
a
Okay,
separate
that
cult
makes
track
sense.
board. Yeah.
Sure, why not? Okay, so do you have all the graphics done for those?
For the most part, the
Yeah, I mean
influence
that's
track.
really simple. That's really easy to
Yeah.
upload into tabletop. So it sounds like the card deck is probably the hardest thing to do. Other than that, it sounds like it's just counters and well tiles or boards. That shouldn't be too hard.
The only thing I'd worry about, it's been a while since I've played with it, and I'm not sure if it's a physics-based thing, so it should be fine. But when you cycle each round, there are the 3 boards: present, past, and then the deep past, or whatever you want to
Oh right,
call
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
And then the deep past cycles out every round, so you clear the board and then move it up to the present, and both other boards slide down.
Yeah. Oh, you'd have to
Would that be
manually
easy
do
enough to
that.
do manually?
Well, what's on the board? How much stuff?
Um, Fair amount of stuff.
You can probably lock the state. I just don't know if it'll lock the board to the table.
Hmm.
Because then if you unlocked it, would it unlock everything that's on the board as well?
I don't
I
know.
don't
Can you
know.
make sticky sections? So if I put a meeple here, it's going to stay in that area?
No, not that I
No?
know of. Not that I
Hmm.
know of. I tend to use like shorter, flatter things because of the physics engine. I'm serious.
No,
Uh,
that makes sense.
the physics engine is, obviously it's pretty rudimentary
Hmm.
compared to, some other engines, obviously like Unity or whatever. But it's decent for what it does in terms of it makes things roll like they roll and whatnot.
Hmm.
Um, but for exactly our purposes, sometimes when you shift a board, it will, all the pieces on it will kind of fall over or,
Knock around and
yeah, kind of stay back, like some weird momentum
oh,
going on, like
geez.
it's like some drag where you pull it and then it stops and everything keeps going that's on top of it just for that micrometer. That makes it, a little bit problematic. But in the end, I think you can do it. I think you'll have an okay time doing it. It's just a question of, um, there's probably a way to do it in tabletop simulators so you actually aren't sliding the boards,
Okay.
right? So you just move like a peg around that says 1, 2, and 3, like the
And
order
then,
of things.
okay.
Yeah, and I mean it won't look as
Yeah.
pretty, but it may be more functional in the end. That's one of the problems that I have with Tabletop Simulator is
Hmm.
that often, and it's actually a problem and a benefit of Tabletop Simulator is that sometimes you'll just figure out better ways of doing stuff because the fiddly way that you want to do it or that's always worked is hard to explain or hard to work in the physics. And so you come up with a different solution that in the end looks like, oh, hey, let's use that anyways because it seems to work really well. So some of those happy accidents, those serendipitous events can happen when you work in an environment that's not like a real environment. It's actually not half bad. Cool. Okay, so you got counters, meeples, cards, boards, no dice.
No
Um,
dice.
is there anything else that's in there? That sounds like a pretty easy game to make, Dev. How come it's not done?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But yeah,
No, it
it
should be
doesn't sound
pretty
too
easy.
bad. Yeah, okay. So that should be a project for your next, 4 weeks is to, learn Nandeck, get stuff into Tabletop Simulator, and then even have you started writing rules?
I have them down, but not formalized yet. I mean,
Okay.
I type them all up and such that they make sense to me, and they're all
Yeah, yeah, we
there.
talked about
Yeah,
that before,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So that's
So
kind of
of
the
a format, that's another thing that you might want to do is have a format, um, get a format of the rules,
go
at
through and
least.
make it at least reasonably like play testable. Hand
Yeah,
this to someone, they can read it,
yeah,
understand it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, because if you have the simulator running and the workshop going, then I think that's a good way to just even test your stuff as soon as you can, right? Because the sooner you
Hmm.
test it, the less effort you've invested in making it, and then it makes it that much easier to change when people say, "Oh, that
Yep.
doesn't make any sense," right?
Yep.
Um, and you'll notice that stuff sooner than
Hmm.
if you spend so much effort on it that it's like, we should have tried it before. So that's good. That's good. Um, Now your stuff doesn't have any particular art or anything, right? You're just going pretty much bare
No.
bones right now. That's
Hmm.
cool. That's totally fine, totally fine, totally fine. Um,
I wish I had
okay.
art, but
Haha,
stick.
everybody wishes they have art.
Yeah.
But you know what? Sometimes the art obfuscates the mechanics to the point where it's like,
Especially for
it's
prototypes. Yeah.
yeah, it's
That's.
not it's not really the be all and end all of everything. Okay. Now, do you have any questions? Do you have any questions?
Besides the curiosity about the boards, how the board might work in Tabletop Simulator. Let's think. I don't, not on the top of my head. One thing. Okay,
Yeah?
so in the last playtest,
Mm-hmm.
there's the resource fame, And at the end of the game, whoever has the most fame gets a certain number of points. Whoever has the least fame gets negative points. And you use it to
Okay.
get influence on the tracks, and you can use it for a few other things. Um, but someone wanted that to be secret because they didn't like people gaming that at the end. Like, if I take this, I'll get just one more than he did. I mean, the games go either way, but for things
Right.
like that, trying to minimize AP for like the final round of play and hide certain aspects of the scoring, not all of
Right.
it, some of it's definitely not hidden and won't ever be hidden,
Hmm.
but do you think it'd be an okay idea to hide some of it but not hide other parts, or would that just
Um,
be incongruous?
there's well, no, I mean, hiding some but not all is actually not a bad thing. You need to give people an idea. I mean, this is my philosophy, anyways. That you need to give people an idea of where they stand. Otherwise, they don't know where to put all the right effort. So it's just like, I don't know. So it's midterms right now in college, and I'm looking at the marks to some of the students and thinking, hey, I should probably tell them they're failing, because they need to decide whether they want to continue in the course or not, right? I mean, it's the
Yeah.
waste of time if they're failing, and they're like beyond redemption, or if it's like, if you get 5% more stuff, you'll be okay. Um, and so it's the same thing in games. Like at some point, you kind of have to have this check-in where it's like, oh, things are pretty good. You're doing okay. You're within striking range. You should keep playing this game. Those are all important things. I know your scores end up being quite tight, and that makes it almost more important because then somebody really needs to know, where do I need to, what's the way I can eke out one more point. The
Mhm.
issue though is that you end up getting a little bit AP and a little bit of gaming, and some king making may happen. So that's where people in general dislike um, the counting of points all the way through, where there's no hidden points. Some people may not like that. Other people are quite fine with it. So it just depends on the
Okay.
game and how big of a swing a move can get you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you're up by 4 points and there's no move that can get anybody more than 1 point, why are we playing? Uh, but if you're up by 4 points and there's some 5 and 6 and 7 point cards to claim out there, or maybe in my hand or things like that, then we've got a game, right? We still need to have a
Mhm.
game at the end of it all. Otherwise, it just becomes an exercise in futility, and I think that's where some people get kind of cheesed off by it. So where do you think your game sits in terms of scoring? Is it more, oh, there's lots of opportunity for more things to happen, or is it, hey, we're counting down to just inevitable doom?
I think it leans toward the former. There's a few things that
Good.
if you just won't be able to do by the last round, but usually you can eke out one or two more points. The issue with fame in particular is that you spend it to go up on the influence tracks. And the
Right, right,
influence
right.
tracks, each of those score first, second, third. So you
Hmm.
can guarantee yourself a certain amount of points now by doing that, potentially. If I want to get in front of this person to get 3 more points here. But by spending that fame, if you drop below the minimum, the least fame, you're going to lose 4 points at the end.
Cool. Okay.
So hiding that element, only that element, it's like, well, I want to spend this for these points and hope that I don't have the fewest, or hope that I still have more than him,
Right.
based
And
on
I
what
mean,
I've seen him spend.
yeah, and that might be enough. If that's kind of the volatile one, where there's a big plus minus,
And it's not a
that might,
huge swing to begin with, and it's only the extremes that get the
yeah.
points. So I don't know.
Well, maybe, I don't know. Huh, interesting. Yeah, just try it, right?
Yeah.
See what it feels like. You'll find that there's going to be a time where it feels better to do it one way. And thematically as well. I mean, things like fame, maybe fame shouldn't be that, because fame is something you can tell everybody has. Whereas inventions, somebody might unveil a secret, right? From my hand, here's this really cool invention I just made. Nobody knew I was going to do it, and it's bam, 15 points. Or I don't know. I'm just
Yeah.
playing. But yeah, I mean that's a good design question for you is, what do you want this to be? Do you want it to be cold and calculating? Do you want it to have that and everybody's in the game until the end kind of feel? So when we're crafting the feeling of the game, when we're really saying this is what this game should feel like, you got to own that and you got to say, hey, here's what I think it's going to feel like, and make craft all the events in the game towards bringing that experience to the players. If it is we like ahas in this game, then you're gonna hide some stuff. If it's no, it's calculating and scientific and cold and heartless, then it's points up until the end,
Mhm.
um, and that's okay too. There's also maybe some things to think about in terms of when you point up and when you count and when you count what, that may help people figure out,
Yeah.
not figure out, but may help people deal with some of that, some of those negative aspects or the feelings that they have in terms of revealing so much or whatnot. Because
Mhm.
if you never count up until the end, then nobody knows anything. And if you always count up after every round, then everybody knows everything.
Mhm.
So maybe it's an idea to put. I personally like you know intervals, but a decent amount of time between the intervals, that it could be anybody's race, and then we see where we are at the end of a leg, and it could be anybody's race, and you just kind of know your standing, that everybody's within a few points of each other. Um, and that's also interesting as well. I mean, we do a couple things in The Godfather where you can outstrip your opponent by like 20 points, but eventually you just kind of all get shoved down into this like basically like relative ranking,
Hmm.
right? Where the
Mhm.
volume of points isn't the what matters; it's the relative ranking at the end.
Well,
For that's a sub scoring. Well, it's not even a scoring; it's a sub system of the game. But the idea being that you might have somebody who invests so hard in one thing that they end up really wasting all of their resources on that turn, getting a score they didn't need to get, and that's kind of interesting too. So that's what happens when you hide everything. You might make people pay for that by saying, "Oh, okay, you got to actually think about what everybody's trying to get." I don't know.
mhm.
There's pros and cons to all these things, though. And in
Mhm.
the end, it really does go back to what is the experience that you're trying to convey. So tell me, what is the experience you're trying to convey? What do you want players to feel like? Who do you want them to be, right?
I want to feel like they're achieving whatever they try to do on their turn, and that it's advancing their end game, and that whatever they're trying to do, make all of those paths kind of lead in the same point direction, such that when it gets to the end, if a person has done what they wanted to do really well, better than what someone else doing what they wanted to do, then they're going to have more points for it. So all of it's hidden until the end right now, kind of. It's hidden in the sense that people would have to add it all up constantly, and it's not on
Right.
a board anywhere. It's not on a track. Um, I had one player in the 3 playtests comment that a score track would be nice.
Right.
So maybe I'm doing it wrong this way, but
Well,
I like the fact that you don't know exactly how many points you're getting over him, but you can see how many upgrades he has built. You can kind of get a general idea based on his position on the influence tracks of how you're doing relative to this person
right.
without knowing exact intervals.
Hmm.
There are some victory points that are visible, like when you get a big breakthrough in
Right. Yeah, yeah,
science,
yeah. The
you get
science
those
stuff, right?
points.
Science in your face.
Those are right in front of you. Fame and the influence can shift, but the science, like there are some points that are just there and never go away.
Hmm.
But most of it's
Well,
relatively
that's
visible,
true
but
too,
not
right? Because
exactly
some of the
visible.
stuff that you're talking about, so like fame isn't actually an additive score.
Mm-mm.
It fluctuates, and at the end, that's what you got. But it can go up and down during the game. Is that true?
I mean, kind of. There's it influences other scoring throughout the game. You're
Oh,
getting it and you're spending it to get
right, right,
points
right.
with
Okay, I
other
see.
things.
Right, right.
And
But
then
in
at
the end,
the
it does count
end,
as a scoring thing.
it counts if you have the most of it. So if you keep more
Or
than
the
anyone else,
least.
or the
Or the
least.
least.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the end, it's sort of like desserts in Sushi Go,
Yes,
right? That it
it's
doesn't
exactly like
matter
the pudding.
unless you had the most or the least. Okay,
Yeah,
right.
but how
Okay,
you spent it throughout the game does matter.
right. And I think that's really cool. I think that to me, any economy that's a score that you're actually having to invest to get, hopefully get more. I think that's great because it's that push your luck element already, right? Without having to be
Hmm.
dice. You're like, I'm investing in myself. I believe that this is going to be a worthwhile investment. And that's a good thing, right? And that
Hmm.
makes people feel clever when their investment pays off
Yep.
because they're like, I made that happen. I did this, I chose this, and I wish I had chosen to believe in myself even more because then I'd be kicking your butt even further. But
No, that was one comment in the last one actually. That one of my friends who playtests a lot of my games and plays a bunch
mhm.
of games generally. It's like this is the first time I felt like I was doing well the first time playing one of your games. He was
Oh, that's good.
so that was nice
Do
to
you
hear.
do you typically make games that are like kind of obfuscated and like confusing?
Obfuscated and confusing. I try not to, but some of them have
Well, okay.
been. Some
So
of them have been in the past.
I
Yeah.
have a friend, and he's probably listening right now, Jesse. My friend Jesse, who I co-designed with, is classically known as 1 ounce too clever, Jesse. Like
One
everything
ounce.
he makes is like you have to play it twice in order to understand it. Hi, there he is. Hi, Jesse. He's joining in the stream right now. That yeah, everything he makes, pretty much everything he makes, um, it's a one it's a, not a one play. It's like you play it twice or three times before you understand what's going on. And it's problematic in a lot of ways because it has there are like a certain type of gamer will want to play it again
Mhm.
because they're like, oh, I almost got it. I kind of get it. Let's do this again. And then the other type of gamer will say, let's not
Let's
bother
play
because
something else. Yeah.
let's play something else. And so but most people are, oh, let's try it again because I see now what we need to do. There's that one, oh, I can be clever the next time. And when you think of the statement of cleverness, I've been talking about it a lot today. Really, all that is player agency, taken to a level where
Mhm.
you have a feeling attached to it. And player agency really psychologically is self-efficacy, which is, did I do what I wanted to do? Did the
Mhm.
outcome that happened happen because I wanted it to happen or I made it happen? Because desire is just part of it. It's actually the doing that makes you feel efficacious. And so I think when a game is one step too clever, that you can't feel that, but people want to feel that. And so for the people who really want to feel clever, they'll play those games again because they get it. They're like, oh, I get it now. And for the people
Mhm.
who like to feel clever but don't feel clever when they play a game they don't understand, they don't want to do it at all because it makes them feel, unclever. People don't want to feel unclever.
Yeah.
So what do you think your game makes people feel?
I think it's much more on the um, not one step too clever side. Just the right amount of
Okay.
cleverness.
And was that because
It's
you is that
getting
because
there
you
at
cut out the
least.
trick taking?
I think so. Yeah, that was
Okay.
pretty obtuse
Okay.
scoring at the
Right.
end.
And
But
so when the trick taking was in, it was one step too clever.
yeah,
Okay. And so now
that
we're
was the
getting to
problem.
something.
Mhm.
Right. Okay. So by cutting a little bit here and there, you're getting closer and closer to not being a Jesse game. Haha, Jess. Sorry. You're getting one step closer to removing some of the barriers from enjoyment for actually significant population of game players. I mean, as a designer, you got to kind of get out of your head that everybody's like me
Mhm.
because not everybody's like you. Otherwise, everybody would be designing games, and even everybody who designs games isn't like you. There are some people who are, you know, doing it for fun. There's some people who are really mathematical and serious about it, and there's some people who, naturally do it, and there's some people who really have to work at it. And so, not everybody who designs is the same either. And the problem when we playtest in a vacuum is that we sort of get used to us and me or the guys I playtest with.
Yeah.
And so we have to be very aware that playtesting outside of that vacuum will help us really shed some light on, okay, what really needs to go, right?
Mhm.
'Cause it's funny. I was just doing a rule set the other week, and I put it down in front of a playtest group and said, "Okay, playtest this. We're sending it to a publisher in a couple days." And they're like, "I don't know how they couldn't do it." Well, it took them half an hour to read the rules, which was like really it's supposed to be a very simple rule set.
Mhm.
But apparently, when I last wrote it, I didn't write it the way I write now. I wrote it like a couple years ago, and so it's like, oh, I see. I see where I've impeded the success of this game by the language that I'm using. And it wasn't until I put it in front of people who I wasn't explaining it to verbally or that I wasn't part of the game and that they hadn't played it before that we got to see that really come to light. So definitely, I mean, getting your game with a rule set is important and on tabletop might be important so that we can put it out in front of other people to see if they experience the same thing, to see if they're even reading the rules the same.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that's kind of a good next step for you, because it sounds like everything's kind of where it needs to be. I'm not sure if you know what to do next though, other than the very mechanical process of shifting the cards around,
Development.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of, oh, should this score be seen or not seen, all those types of things, and
It's
how
all
much should
kind
this
of
value be?
experiential at this point, I think.
Exactly, exactly. So
Yeah.
I think you've got a mechanically, at least somewhat sound mechanical game, right? I haven't played it yet, so I don't know. But
Yeah.
from what I'm hearing, your playtesters say that things are going okay that way, and then it's just okay now. Well, what makes it a better experience, and
Hmm.
for who, and what's your vision of this experience, and how are we going to shape that through the feedback of others, right? And
Yep.
Jesse, you're right. There is nothing wrong with a clever game, Jesse. There's
There
nothing
is
wrong at
nothing
all.
wrong with it.
No. It
I'm
has to
right
be
there.
accessible and clever, though, Jess. Accessible. Accessible. Yeah. Cool. All right. Dev, do you have any other points that you want to bring up? Anything else?
No, I don't think so.
Nope. Are you going to be able to get this in front of people who've never played it before, other than on Tabletop Simulator, anytime soon?
Before, yeah, in the next 4 weeks, I'd say definitely at
Awesome.
least one group, maybe two.
And they've never played it before?
Hmm.
That's
Never.
awesome. Good. And oh, well then, sir, maybe you should write your rules
Write the rules
and
for them. Yep.
and let them play it. I mean, in this
Uh,
case, I mean, if it's not like this is 100% the game it's going to be, you can probably interpret the rules for them. But see, let them struggle a little bit just to see where they're struggling. So you take
mhm.
notes of they struggled here, this wording was bad, or they misread my intention, or really my intention when I wrote down this line was this, but they did this. Those are really the important points for your rules,
Mhm.
to get those sort of locked down and say okay, and then go back and reiterate the rules as well. But don't let the game fail. Make sure after they've kind of struggled, you correct them
But yeah, make a note and move on.
and see, yeah, make them
Yeah.
move on, and then also ask them very much to tell you if the game is, if the rules are, if how they would have interpreted the rules has changed based on what you told them before, if you know what I mean, right? So I might say, oh, this doesn't read like that, but based on what you told me before, when you corrected this other rule, I think
Right.
it means this. And I might not just verbalize that, but you should get them to verbalize their thought process when reading the rules,
Yeah.
because that will help you pick your rules apart. So those are all good things. All good things.
Yep.
Sound good?
Hmm.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. And Jesse, why do you design? Jesse says, depends why you design. Let's see if he types anything. He might not be listening.
Yeah, I've definitely had my share of games that have been like that. And the first
Yeah.
attempt I'd had at a mathy kind of game was like blind bidding, and there's 12,000 different things, and it makes the players calculate averages to figure out maybe what they might get if they play this value versus it was.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
people got it, but most people didn't.
Right. And so, I mean, it
Yeah.
depends on who your audience is and who you want your audience to be.
Hmm.
You might very well make a game that has an audience of three, and that's okay as long as that was your intention, right?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
the print and play online. That's fine. Those
Yeah.
three
Yeah. For
people will
sure.
love it.
Yeah. 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 Jesse's saying, he says, half, he makes games have to make the games that he wants to play and have to get published. And And he says, but he does know people who design purely for the fun of design. Yeah, me too. And for those people, accessibility may not be important at all. That's what he meant by what he said before. And that's totally true too.
Yeah,
But
makes sense.
in our case, in your case, I'm thinking accessibility is
It's a little
something you want.
important. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's what I
Right.
was picking up from what you were putting down. Cool. Okay, so you got 3 things. Name them off. What 3 things do you need to do?
Tabletop simulator.
Yeah,
Getting that in. I'm getting it blind play tested with a
yeah,
set of rules.
yeah, yeah. That's it. That's it.
So 2 things.
Well, the rules are one thing and blind play testing is another.
Oh,
They're technically
yeah,
two
I
separate things.
suppose.
And
That is
then
true.
Nandeck will be part of
Part
the
of
tabletop
TTS.
simulator.
Yeah.
And if you can't get Nandeck done, then just put your GIF files in there for now, or your JPEGs or whatever, and that'll
Yeah.
work fine. But I think once you get the workflow with something like Nandeck, then you'll never not use it, right? So
Hmm.
it's worthwhile to spend some time doing it if you have the time.
Yeah.
Sound cool?
Yep.
Excellent. All right. If you have any other questions or concerns, just give me a shout on the Slack channel or on Facebook or whatever. But it was really good hearing how things are going. I'm excited to see this on the simulator sometime soon.
Maybe play
If
it next time.
Well, yeah, exactly. We could
That'd be
play it and
fun.
we could stream that. I think I can. I don't know. I'll try. And definitely 100% going to play it
Yeah,
in
play it.
April, right?
Yep. Definitely.
As long as they allow me across the border. You
Oh
need to like
God.
write to your president and say, "Hey, why
Oh.
are you stopping people?"
Yeah. Don't think that would help. Unfortunately.
Yeah, probably not. He's a little. He doesn't like listening to constituents. I
He
don't
really
think.
doesn't. No.
No, nope. All right, cool. Well, Devin, we'll see you later. Thanks very much, everyone, for tuning into the dojo, and we'll be back next week. I think it's Bob. I think we're talking about zombies next week. We'll see. We'll
I
see.
think that based on the
Yeah,
last.
yeah.
Yeah.
So time traveling zombies and spaceships that ride in ambulances.
In ambulances.
That would be the 4 of the games combined. So I know I'm right when I say that. It's one of those people.
One
All
of
right,
those.
cool. Yes, yes. All right, guys. We'll see you later. Thanks very much from the dojo. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.